Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now.
For us, it was like we were fucking broke. We were shoplifting. We were trying, our van broke down. Like everything sucked.
Hello. Welcome to Hyphenate with me, Randy Randall, for Thursday, March 28th. Today, I'm very excited to welcome the one and only Mr. Justin Pearson. You may know him from the Locust, or his record label, 31G, or his podcast, Cult and Culture. He also has been in many bands like Dead Cross, Def Club, Planet B. Incredible. Yeah, it was such an honor to sit down with Justin. I've known him for many years from San Diego and from touring. We talk about it. We get into it a little bit in the interview when the band I was playing in at the time opened up for his band. And I was probably, 18, maybe 19. No, not even 19. I was probably 18 years old. And it really just solidified in me seeing what he was doing with Gabe and Joey. And it was just, what they were doing as the Locust at that time in the early aughts really just, blew me away. There was so much energy, so much excitement, so much wilding out. Yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, we really just made a lasting impression on me and many other people of my generation and, beyond. So, yeah, Bobby too. Jesus, my brain. I was a big fan and really blown away. And so it'd been fun over the years to kind of get to know him as a person and not just as a personality, which he very much is a personality as well. But it was, fun to kind of just be able to get to know him over the years and then to have him on and talk about all of the cool projects and just all of the stuff he works on. I mean, he is a tireless hard worker, say what you will about any other aspect or, things that, you like or don't like about the Locust or Justin's, personality or any of those kinds of, I don't know what people say. I mean, I think Justin has worked to be polarizing, publicly. I think he's gone out there and pushed buttons and done everything he can. And I've always loved that about him. But to, just know him as a person and to kind of just see, how hard of a worker he is and just tireless and always working and always like creating something and always starting something new. And he just never stops. I mean, I think there's just so much respect there for just being a force to reckon with. You know what I mean? It's not like anything has ever come easy. You can never say, oh, he was, this kid that just got everything handed to him. Like, I think he has worked harder and longer than anybody else I've known in music. And all the success and everything that he experiences is because of that. You just got to hand it to him. So I'm really happy we get to do this. Happy it's getting towards the end of March. Got April coming up. This month is flying by. I hope everybody's doing well out there. I hope everybody dug last week's interview with Colleen Fazio. She is incredible and super awesome. And I hope everybody is getting their vintage amps fixed by her. And happy to present this interview with Mr. Justin Pearson. Awesome, Justin. Thank you so much for joining me here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's everything going?
That's a loaded question.
How's things? The world is great. It's a beautiful place. Well, I'll start this way. Tell me about Planet B.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Planet B.
Yeah.
We've been working on a record since before the pandemic, and so it's kind of like it's coming out next month in a couple weeks, actually. But it's a weird band. It's got technically it's like 3 drummers and people don't, like the industry, like they're just like, we don't know what this is. Fuck
Perfect.
you. Yeah. So,
Well, it feels very dancey, very electronic. I don't know. I would kind of put it probably in the Venn diagram towards maybe goth, maybe a little, kind of dance goth. I don't know. If I had to pick a circle to start overlapping in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all our influences are coming from everywhere, but for the most part, like the producer or the main songwriter Luke Henshaw comes from like hip hop, so it's got this like it's got the dance aspect to it, Yeah, but a lot of times people are like, it's punk, it's noise, it's experimental, it's and I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's just music.
Yeah, one of the best descriptors I remember reading early on when No Age was starting. It was some kind of like 90s British magazine, and they called some band distortion rock. I don't think grunge had really cemented itself. I was like, distortion rock. I like it. It means nothing, but it's so perfect because none of this stuff means anything. These are all just made up words. You can just make up whatever words you want, and if people say it enough, it sticks.
It really is trash. It's funny because I always try to tell people like, they're like, what kind of music do you play? And I'm like, annoying. And I'm like, it's very accurate.
Yeah. I've taken to the general punk term. And if anybody has more to say past that, then we can have a conversation. But in general, punk usually is a conversation stopper more often than starter, and just in general casual, it's this kind of, so what do you do? Like, I play in a punk band. I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then they'll either go, my uncle gave me a Black Flag tape or I saw Blink 182. Like you can kind of quickly parse it out. Like I went to Hot Topic when I was 18. You're like, okay. Yeah. We can kind of figure out where the conversation goes. Yeah. But it's an easy sort of like poison pill you can put out there. Just say punk. And then whatever people bring to that word is where that conversation's going to happen.
I think like for me with my even with the Locust and stuff, if I was to ever say punk and someone fed into it, they're like, oh, and it'll like immediately get to like, what the fuck? This isn't punk. And I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm out of here.
Well, if it goes, I always kind of subscribe to the SST definition of punk or the D Boone. Punk is what you make it. Start your own band. If you don't like my band, I don't give a shit if you like my band or not. Start your own band. That's it. But I would say, in the larger cultural frame, I think, you've sort of you're one of the early disruptors. I think that's an easy way to, that's a term that's kind of become a tech term. But I think, when I think of JP and Locust, I think you were definitely a person whose reputation would sometimes precede you. I think in as much as or at least, I put myself in Los Angeles, Southern California, Inland Empire sort of music scene coming up. I was born in 81. So started really going to shows kind of mid 90s, and the Locust were, it was literally, it was that ominous sort of feeling, they came over like, it was the masks. It was mysterious. It was loud and fast and scary. It was all the things I would hope were intentional and some even not unintentional, but it worked. It was great. I mean, I definitely, I'll get it out of the way. So I played in a band called The Count, and we opened for you at the Showcase Theater in Rialto. And I would say that probably about 2000, maybe not even 2001. I would almost say pre 9/11, somewhere right about there.
Yes.
Does that sound about right?
I remember the show. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys were you guys were driving from somewhere and were tired. And to me, I think I was going to college at the time and, had just left the house and moved to Hollywood and met these kids from closer to where I lived. I felt like I was a little bit more grown up than them, but we rehearsed at the kid who's still the guitar player who's still in high school. So I'd have to drive back to my like suburban house from Hollywood to go practice with these guys. And I was like, what are you doing here? I was kind of coming from a 4-track sort of Sonic Youthy world. And they're like, well, the song's about 30 seconds and we all just go crazy. We start at the same time. We all stop at the same time. I'm like, all right. And you guys play live? This is what we're doing here. They needed that was probably the third or fourth bass player. And I'd never played bass, but they gave me a bass and they said, yeah, we all start and stop at the same time. And that's it. And I was like, okay. But I like getting out of the bedroom. So that was the thing. So we played I played 4 shows with them. Played at Alex's backyard, Alex from PCH's backyard, that Showcase one, Headline Records. And there was one other like kind of Torrance or Downey kind of like show space. So
That's crazy that you only played 4 shows. I remember the show and the band for sure. So
well,
that's wild.
The thing I remembered is you guys were touring. You guys had a van and you were out in the world, and you came back and you were tired. And I think I was just, I want all of this. I love all of this stuff. The touring, I think, because I felt very landlocked, or at least very kind of young and new to everything. So just the idea of knowing a band who toured and left the state and would go play music for strangers. Just was all romantic. Everything had pixie dust. I loved all of it.
Yeah, but like we would tour back then, and like we would not know like how to maintain a van, so we would just basically drive until it like broke down. Like God. I remember like the drive shaft fell off that van after we were coming home. It just flew off on the freeway. And then, we were like sleeping on people's floors and getting paid nothing. So like, yeah, if that's what you wanted, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it was only a few short years later. I think 2003 we did our first U.S. tour with which we had no business doing. But again, it was floors and stealing food from the grocery store and van breaking down. We had our the thing that I don't know what it is. From the steering wheel to the wheels, one of the side broke, so we could only steer one wheel. One wheel was just always going to go straight, the other one would just turn like this. And somebody like drove next to us like, "There's sparks coming from under your van." So we tried to go pull off, and that's when we kind of realized like we didn't die. But But you were one of my early sort of influences and one of those early sort of like heroes. I think in terms of just a band that was highly professional for as wild and chaotic as it was. I definitely respected the fact that you guys were a unit and there was a regiment. It was their intention, I guess, is probably but I didn't understand that at the time. I just thought it was professionality, but I think there was intent. Now, as a creative person, I can understand, I can recognize another artist who like you guys there was a vision there and it was synchronized to some degree.
It's crazy that you said professional the vision, but like the professional thing, I'm like, there was no professionalism, but, the vision, I think, came. Hold on.
Yeah.
The vision, I think, came like on accident, because we were kind of just like, we want to do this thing, and it was very like small. We wanted to be like crossed out, and then we ended up becoming this other thing over here. So I don't know, like it was all subconscious, I suppose. Man, it's weird to hear you say all this stuff. I don't.
Sorry, I don't mean to fanboy out so hard.
Just like the professionalism and stuff. I don't think we were. I don't think we knew what professionalism was. We just had no other option. Like we were like, we have to do this thing, and we did it as best as we could.
Yeah. Well, and I get it though too. It's hard to kind of know how you're seen by other people, but I think there was always like a younger sort of fan base. I think that was attracted to everything, that at least, from that Locust period forward. And that seemed to be an intention to play all ages spaces or to kind of have this.
I think in the whole time the Locust was active, I think we played 2 age restricted shows. One was like in New York, it was like
16 and
to
over.
Have 16 over, and then the other time we did one in like Montreal or something that was 18 and up, and it was the only way we could get into Canada if we played this show. So we played a record store for free, literally like right down the street. We walked our gear from the record store to the venue, and then we played an 18 and up show. But how it was like with the smell and everything, it was always just better to have all ages shows. It just was funner. And
always. And you were going to, it was going to be an interesting crowd, even if everybody wasn't underage. It's the people that would go to all ages shows were just a more open-minded, sort of had different intentions. They weren't there to meet girls and drink at the bar. They came to see music. Yeah. They came to experience something different. And,
Yeah. I think like, I don't know. I mean, it was never our reasoning for playing was never like monetarily concerned. Like we weren't concerned with like, can we get a better guarantee by playing the 21 and up venue? It just wasn't an option,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But so the theme of the show, it's called Hyphenate, talk to multi-hyphenates. And obviously, when I think of you and I think of, record labels, bands, not just one band, many bands and, many genres of bands. And, you've definitely always seemed to be going in all directions at once at the same time in a good way. Like, I'll press go on everything. Tell me, where did that start? Like what, growing up, what were sort of some of your inspirations and what sort of got you pumped to start all these things, bands, record label, everything? Well,
I guess looking back in retrospect, I could see like how it happened, but at the time I was just like necessity, like, oh, I have to survive. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. I think like maybe taking like a cue from like, I don't know, maybe, like Ian MacKay or Jello Biafra or who, someone that like that was in a band and ran a label. That would be the obvious thing, but it never was like, I never said like, I want to play music and run a record label and then do all this other shit that I ended up doing. It was kind of just like, again, necessity. Like, cause I remember, being in my first band Struggle and kind of being bummed on, working with certain labels, not Ebullition. I want to go ahead and say that was a great record label. So being on a good record label kind of set the bar. And then if I ended up doing stuff like with other labels, I was like, oh, this sucks. Actually, I think I should just do this myself. And so I just started a record label, and I fucking regret every second of it. It's 138 record releases later. It's never been. It's not really fun to do. The best thing is like when you get the best thing is like when you get the record and you can hold it, and you're like, this is so
you smell it
cool.
Fresh from the plant, that smell of new records. It's a magical thing.
But there's nothing else that in the process of like actually releasing that's fun. It's so much better to have another label just do it. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is so much better. I can hold the record at the end and not have to do any of the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, obviously the mechanics and just the overall economics of releasing music, like all things creative or independent, has seen sort of a downward spiral in many aspects, with the streaming and all this other kind of stuff. So it was hard to predict that was, I never would have predicted that the downfall of that, or at least the de-evolution of sort of the appreciation of like physical media. But
a lot of labels folded, and especially like looking at like some, like it's really weird. Okay, this is a weird one because 31G just re-released this Angel Hair anthology, and it's strange because Sonny K ran GSL, and that was such a pivotal, important thing for the Locust and for me. And it's weird to like how labels did end up folding, and I'm like, how the hell did I stay around, or how did 31G stay around? And I think it's the fact that like I figured out how to like work for free and not like, I don't know how I did it. I'm not very business minded. So like I'll do like, oh, we have these records and your band broke up. Let's just do like a 99-cent flash sale and like sell and like get them out of here. That's a totally impractical thing, but like people seem psyched on that kind of shit. And I guess it like, I like the idea of 31G is like has value where like there is actually no real value. Like you could be like, oh, you make all this money or you have all this money. I'm like, no, the account is overdrawn. It's actually literally overdrawn right now. Oh. I'm like, whatever, fuck it. Who cares?
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's definitely, it's a passion project. Dean, my partner in No Age and, bands before that, he started his label PPM, really early on. And I think it's pretty much lost money the entire way. And I've kind of been in the sidecar next to him, seeing it all go down. And it definitely made it very, all the romantic sort of ideas of being a record label owner, runner. It's like, oh no, I see it from the side and just the ups, downs, the highs, the lows. And it's like, I've always appreciated, it's made me appreciate any label that I've gotten to work with, and it's like, it's worth paying whatever, with a 50-50 split, whatever it is, they earn that because it's a shit ton of work to do all that stuff and to just, to put the money up and, try to get it out there. Any publicity, anything that can be done to help sell a record is hard fucking work.
Dude, I know. And also like I'm a publicist for myself now, which is just also kind of at times like very humiliating to like be like, hey, will you cover my band? It's one thing to be like, hey, will you cover this band that I just put the record out or whatever, but like it's really weird to say like, hey, cover this.
Yeah. But again, that's changed as well. Like what are music outlets today? You know what I mean? What does that even look like? I've had a lot of talks with younger artists and even, friends, kind of my generation and talking about making music. And I've helped friends, I got more into the recording side of things. I was like, okay, recording's fun. I like that. I can turn knobs. I can learn about compressors and preamps and that kind of stuff. I'll make the records, but I don't want to make the records. I'll make the music and I'll record it. But once it's done and mastered, whatever happens past that point is so unromantic and so uncreative to me. That's so machinery oriented. Like, yes, just print it. Is it this tip on? Is it stout? I don't care. Is it 180? I don't care. Is it where where does it come out of? I don't care. It's fun. It's fun when I get it, but in terms of paying for it or like pricing it out, like I got a good deal in the Czech Republic, but they're all going to be bent. Like, I don't care. Like
Yeah.
it's just is so unfun. But the idea of like what does success in a creative sort of space look like in 2024? I mean, this is sort of the thing that, like, you know what I mean? Or there was a certain, you know, I think we're probably similar in age, but it was the, you know, there was certain outlets like, or even, you know, an MTV or a Rolling Stone, stuff to even rail against, like, fuck these guys, you know, this is big corporate media covering or not covering, you know, important cultural stuff. And you could have an opinion about that, but the truth is now, like, that stuff is just, it's really gone the way of the dinosaurs. It's all sort of different, you know, like, what is the point of Pitchfork, you know, just got absorbed, you know, and just got shut down and this is the website that would crash people, make or break people's careers. I think No Age was very lucky to be on the beneficial side of some nice Pitchfork things, but it also, the hand that gives also takes. And as the year, you know, as the records went on, we would get a shit review and it's like, well, fuck these guys. It didn't matter, you know, but then you can't have it both ways. If you believe the good reviews, you got to believe the bad reviews. But now, and then fast forward a few more years and it just doesn't even exist. No one cares.
Like, well, you said a lot there because for one, like, I remember, no. I mean, I think for one, like, when you get a negative or a positive review on Pitchfork, I think the fact that they're even talking about it is a big deal because there's like, I think the statistic is like 200,000 new songs come out per day.
Wow.
Which is like a lot. So if they're saying your band sucks, like, hey, you know, you got noticed some attention. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I remember I put out this birthday party tribute compilation called Release the Bats. And it, you know, it has one song that I'm on. And it's a Some Girl song on it, but it has a bunch of other bands, a lot of amazing, amazing bands. And the whole review on Pitchfork was just talking shit about my haircut. And I was like, that's really fucking lame. Yeah. Like, that is terrible journalism. And you know, if I would have known, I would have been like, joke's on you. You're going to get bought out by GQ in like a decade or whatever, or however long, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember when I was a kid and in Rolling Stone, like, this is before the internet, so it was like print, there was this thing in the back where it like listed, I forgot like what it was, but it like listed like top selling or best something records. And I remember the Heroin Paper Bag 7-inch was in there. And I was like, how did that record, that like super, that's like the poster record, you know, like the poster child of DIY culture, you know, like how did that get mentioned in Rolling Stone? And so I've always had this like sort of, I don't want to say love-hate relationship, but I've always been infatuated by like coverage like that. Cause I remember like when the Locust would get in Spin and stuff like that, I was like, oh, this is crazy. Even if it's bad, I'm like, even like this huge conglomerate is talking about this thing that we did. And so that was really cool. And I think even now, like on the PR landscape, a lot of it comes down to, can you find someone to write a cool piece about you? And then can you use that to get a booking agent or a promoter to put on your show or get signed to a better label or whatever? It's not really to like sell records or something, you know, it's just kind of like this thing to say like, this exists. Someone paid attention to my band. So yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is weird. It's so strange.
Yeah, I know. I think I got caught up a little bit in some of the digitalness of it all, because I guess especially around, you know, records not really, people not really buying records in this, just in the streaming sense. So it's like, okay, well, you know, I could justify jumping through a lot of hoops and making funny videos and, you know, being kind of wacky on the internet if it was people were going to buy something. You know, if there was I'm making a commercial to sell a thing here. This is what I'm going to do here. I get there's a monetary sort of like exchange we're doing here, but when that goes away, I remember for me personally, just kind of feeling like, what am I doing? Like, and what is this all about? And then I think I look at, you know, stuff like, you know, specifically like younger bands who are starting out, and it's like, you're making content for your social media channels. And that's just, no one pays for that, but you got to spend a lot of time doing it, and you got to monitor and admin and, you know, and talk to people about it. And then, so that gets, you know, then go listen to my new song. Like, cool. Okay. That's streaming over here. Okay. So there's no money there. Okay. So if you get 100 people to look at your social media, they say 20 of them actually go listen to the song. And of those 20, how many are going to come to a show? You know, maybe you get 1, 2 and it's just in the trickle down sort of like thing of it. But in the meantime, you know, whatever Mark Zuckerberg's, made his content on one thing. Spotify's made their money off of that thing. And by the time it comes to it, the only chance a band has to make that any money, it would be that live ticket or that t-shirt they're going to sell you themselves at the show.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow, this is a lot of, I'm watering a lot of plants before I get to see any fruit of it all. It's just kind of it's been my sort of, I don't know if I'm old man shaking my fist at a cloud at this point, but just looking at the landscape where it used to be, you'd make a flyer, you could put it up everywhere, go to every coffee shop. There's the flyer, there's the gig, there's the record. You know what I mean? There was a simpler time, I guess, but I don't know.
Well,
maybe I'm missing the point of it all.
I do struggle with feeling like the old person in the room sometimes, because I'm like, you know what? It is what it is. Like, yeah. I don't know. Because I mean, think about it. Like, you had saw the Locust and had this vision of this thing, and so you at that showcase show, it's like, for us, it was like we were fucking broke. We were shoplifting. We were trying, our van broke down. Like, everything sucked, sort to an extent. And it's like we came home and had to find new jobs and had to, cover, pay bills or whatever. And so it's probably similar where you're like younger now, you're like, I need to be on TikTok and I'm going to do the thing. And like, I'm going to fart out all this content, and it might be similar to what we did because the payoff is like nothing.
Right.
But I think like for us, it was like, we could still have that experience. Like, we went and traveled all over the place and we like met weirdos in like fucking Bakersfield or, Albany or, whatever, like just random places, and did like all this super strange shit, almost died. Now it's like, you just kind of, the enjoyment's like, what is happening on my phone? And it's all like, I can just stay home and be like, oh my God, so-and-so retweeted or not reposted. Right. Yeah. Now I sound like an old person. Oh, the so-and-so likes my shit or whatever. Like, and I don't know. Like,
at the end of the day, you're just as broke and stealing food anyway. Yeah, right. That makes sense, and I think that's a beautiful part. I think of what just that experience of being young and excited. There's a certain naivete to this stuff. I think if we were actually trying to make money at it, we would never have done any of this stuff. Because that was never really the point. And so I guess, I'm almost missing the spirit of the endeavor by kind of applying my sort of like thinking man sort of business model to it now with this, in hindsight, kind of going, but you kids, you're not making any money. What the fuck are you doing? Like, at least you could have sold a CD, you know what markup is on a t-shirt. You could go 3X on your, it doesn't fucking matter. Right? No one cares. Make a zine, you go to zero, find a way to get free, photocopies, crack the code at Kinko's, make zines, go out there. And again, none of that shit made any money, but it was fun. And you're right. And you created a culture, and you created something around yourself. You created a scene. You created there was a social sort of aspect to it that was the point, not really to make money. You're right.
Well, maybe this might be like a strange analogy, but I don't remember exactly who the Locust was playing with, but we played The Smell, and I remember Mark Wahlberg came to the show, and
the actor, Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was really strange because, there was like a lot of chatter about it. This is before the internet.
Of course.
Before no one had phones, so like there's no documentation of it. So like he came to the show, and half the people were like, "Why the fuck is that guy here?" And then half of them were like, "Oh my God, he's here!"
What the fuck?
And I just started thinking like, "Is that motherfucker here to see us? Because if he is, that's so crazy."
It's cool.
And that'd
be great.
But the reaction was, was legit. It was like, "Don't touch our DIY shit," or like, "Hey, he's a celebrity." But the thing is, like, it didn't really help anybody. It was like, like at the end of the day, like it wasn't like he was like hyping the band. Like now it's like you're waiting for a celebrity to say something about you so you can get 100 new followers on Instagram, So I think I think it's just a different kind of dimension.
Did you talk to him at the show? Did he come up and shake hands or anything, or was it cool? Or no?
I did talk to him briefly. Yeah. And it was funny. And to this day, I think he was like bullshitting me because I had met him when I was 16 with my first band. And I have like a lot of really weird parallel experiences with him. Like, the drummer of my first band's girlfriend won a contest and went on this shopping spree with him and all this shit. So like I had met him, and I met him randomly at this Tower Records, and people were like getting his record signed, and I was like, I'm not buying his record, but I was like, I got a backpack full of my own band 7-inches. So I was like, hey, you want to sign my 7-inch? And so, but he remembered that,
of course,
at the Locust show. And I was like,
that's amazing.
Well, he said he did,
okay,
So I was like, cool. And so then I felt like, oh, maybe he's here to see, the Locust.
Wow. Wow. What a
Anyhow,
parallel universe. Mark Wahlberg would star as you in the biopic. or better yet, he would license one of your songs back then, and you'd have a $50,000 payday, which would have been sweet. But
yeah.
who knows? But everyone would have hated you guys for doing that. I'm like, what? Their song can't be in this. I think that's
Oh, I know.
a whole other story.
Yeah.
So music. Where did was it bass? Was it singing? What sort of like what really sort of put you together like as music? Is that's sort of what I think when people think Justin, they think bass music, singing. Was that the intention, or where did that kind of start?
Bass was definitely the intention. I'm not really sure why I gravitated towards that instrument, but I did have a guitar that my mom's cousin loaned me, and I could kind of play it. I learned I learned some like, basic like cramps and just kind of like some stuff. But and then I don't know how I got onto the bass, but I remember getting a bass guitar, and I remember like really freaking out over that band No Means No. And I was like, oh shit, the bass is kind of the jam. And so then I ended up started playing with a drummer, and then that was like how I played. That was my thing. And it wasn't, the singing thing was weird because in my first band I just played bass, but I occasionally would write some lyrics, and I was like, oh, I want to maybe try that. And the thing that made me think about it actually was Aaron Montaigne, who was the drummer of Heroin and then became the singer of Antioch Arrow. And I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna try that out. And I think I failed miserably, but people always are like, you're too, hard on yourself. Cause my first band I sang in, I didn't know how to vocally sing. And I also had no idea how to write lyrics. My timing was kind of shoddy. And like, because one thing, if you're playing bass and you're following the drums and you're like, here's my timing, but when you're singing and you have to breathe and do all these like things, with your body, I kept like fucking up, and I'm like, or you get like too passionate and you're like, I was like, oh, and like missed the one or whatever, and back then it was like, we didn't really have the ability to keep doing take after take. It was all analog. So I'm like, oh, this is fucked up. But then like the vocal thing kind of stuck. And then in the Locust, when, again, even in the Locust, I wasn't initially singing, and it wasn't until like, it was just kind of like by default, the people that were singing left, and Bobby and I were like, we're going to just sing. And then it kind of went as like a came hand in hand, which I think might have like actually in hindsight, like upped my playing ability, because it's really hard to play bass, sing, and use all pedals, and also wear a mask and not be able to fucking see anything, it was like a test, like kind of like the Jedi thing where he has the mask on and
close your eyes, spin around in a circle and try to hit this note and kick the soccer ball while you're doing it.
Yeah.
So. Oh man. Yeah, I mean it's wild. So there's some necessity and some just sort of the creative expression and an explosion. I mean, did you have, was it a friend group from early on, like high school? Like these are your friends in the punk? And where were you going to see shows? Was it Che Cafe? Was there? I'm sure there's a million things that I don't know. I'm a foreigner to San Diego.
Well, we were all friends, and San Diego is just like parts of Los Angeles. I feel like we have like, again, Southern California has like such a unique thing where like it is a real hodgepodge of stuff, but especially in San Diego here, it was kind of like you were friends with anyone that was remotely artistic or weird, into weird shit, and I remember like, my first band, like I remember playing at a garage in this place called Ramona, and it was like all these neo-Nazis. Oh. And then shortly after I played at this campsite at the Bay with like a funk band and Jello Biafra. It was like, you're just like, whatever, like, it all kind of made sense, and so I think that like we would just make do with what we could get our hands on, but it was always friends, like usually high school or like so and so knows so and so at another high school, and then shows just happened. I mean, it was obviously the Che, a lot of house shows, and it was just kind of just like real life networking, I guess, and the code, like you'd go to a show and you'd see someone wearing a certain shirt and you'd be like, oh, like what's up with that person? Like I want to talk to them or whatever, and then I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But even back then we were really in San Diego. It's crazy because we're right next to Mexico. And so in Tijuana, there was this place called Iguanas, and that was like not Che Cafe style, like DIY. Iguanas was like, that's where you went to see like all the gnarly, like, PIL or Bad Brains or Circle Jerks, like all the, and like I could just sneak out of the house and go down to Tijuana and see these like insane, like you could see anyone. And I saw all kinds of crazy shit. So that kind of like also helped things. And then it was also weird going there because you would go to these substantial shows in Mexico and you would see another 13-year-old or 14-year-old, and you're like, hey, you know, and you could kind of tell like going back across the border, you're like, oh, and that was like a way to meet people. You're like, oh, we're both from San Diego into this weird shit, doing this like super sketchy stuff, like going into Mexico and fucking climbing this wall to sneak into a venue, you know, or whatever. So it kind of worked out like that. And everybody became friends that way. It's funny thinking about those shows because all of my friends' bands were there, but before they were like the bands, you know.
Like who are some of the bands or who are some of the people? Like what were you?
I mean, I remember like the people from Broken and stuff. You know, I'd always see them. Or like I remember going down to TJ to see Filth play, and I was with you know, Rick Froberg, who had recently passed away. But it was weird, like going and like I didn't know, I just kind of knew of him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm traveling with this guy that's at the time he was in Pitchfork, or I guess Charlie Jehu, but you know, or like just cruising down there with friends and seeing other people from bands was so wild. And then also like a sort of important player in my life would be Jose Palafox. So he's Latinx, and he was had a better ability at navigating Mexico, you know, Tijuana, than I did as a white person. And so I would kind of go with him and like get shown the ropes and not get like fucking beat up or robbed or whatever. Oh, we got beat up. We did get beat up enough, but you know, it was kind of not as bad, you know.
Yeah, less than it could be. Yeah, it could always get worse. That's incredible. Yeah, I've definitely done that on you know, on the road over the years. Like you play the game of like, were you at that show? Or you know, you kind of think in your head like, oh my God, we were all, you know, people would go on to be in bands with like Dean and I and our front of house engineer Scotty. He grew up in Whittier, like real close to where we all were, and it was like, okay, Fugazi 97, you know, like Glass House, like, oh yeah, I was there, and there's this girl, like, oh yeah, I remember, you know, and you can kind of like piece it together, and it's not a coincidence that we would, you know, 20 years later end up in a van driving in Sweden to a show or something, you know. It's like, of course we this is the reason we're all here, because we all did the same stuff.
It's like that film 24 Hour Party People, where they show that scene where they're the Sex Pistols show, and there's like, oh, there's Buzzcocks and Clash or
Primal Scream. It's this, it's everyone in Manchester who would go on to do something else.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. But it definitely happens. You don't know it at the time, you know what I mean? But there's definitely those people that would stick out to you, you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of that. You know, I think that's sort of what the smell was for me first going there and just seeing a lot of people and be like, oh, okay, there's Dave Stone. Yeah, he sticks out. You know, he's got a particular look. Or even seeing Dean, like, you know, selling zines out in front of shows and like, you know, just all these different people, or going to record stores. It's another, you know, good way. It's like, okay, yeah, you recognize all these people that worked at record stores, and then you see them at the show, and then you know, go on to become friends.
Or going to record stores. I remember going to this one in San Diego and kind of meeting this guy, and he would be like, he'd buy this or buy that, you know, and because you couldn't check out what it sounded like. It was like how it looked. Yep. And I remember him selling me a record by this band Social Spit, and then I was like, oh, this is pretty sick. And I went and saw them play, and I was like, oh shit, he sold me his record. He's the singer. And then that was it. But it was really cool too. And, you know, in retrospect, I was like, wow, man, he's in that band. Like, and that made it even like more special, you know, like, oh, I know the people in the band.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's my favorite. Yeah. We had No H just played a show last night, and somebody was like, oh, they got there late, or we were opening for this band, Black Eyes from DC. They're on Discord. They're doing a reunion show. And so they'd asked us to open, and it's fun. It's fun getting to play early, because you're like, all right, I'm off the stage early. It's a shorter set. But someone came up like, oh, I missed the show. How was it? And it's over the years, like, it was the best show in the world. You missed everything. Yeah. Like, we played the best, and you'll never see anything like that ever again. Like, you just, what else am I supposed to say? You know, it's like one of those things, like, we just learned, well, yeah, if anybody ever missed the show or asked how the show was, just like, yeah, the best show ever, even if it wasn't. It's just one of those fun things of like, what the fuck does it matter? Like, I'm not going to tell you it was a terrible show. Like, that's not what anyone wants to hear. They want to hear it was a great show. Like, yeah.
Well, that's weird, because I always feel like, why are you even bringing this up? It like makes everything kind of suck.
It's a dick move. Like, hey, me, I didn't see you guys, but I'm here now. Like,
yeah, okay. You're like, oh, thanks. Thank you very much. And then also I'm like, well, the show probably could have been better because we just opened, and you're not here because we opened and there was nobody here and people hated us. That's usually my response.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, but I mean, I love just the whole experience of just getting to play. I think that was one of the hardest things during the pandemic, was just the shows weren't there. It just wasn't safe to be out and be at shows.
Yeah.
And it was really just like I didn't realize, because I think at some point, like I'm sure it's happened in your life, but you can get burned out. You do 60 shows in a row in a different city every day. And it's like, okay, I don't know if I need to play tonight. I could use a day off. I could go see a movie. I could sit still and not be in a van. But then, I think we had about a good 2 years there of like no shows. And I was like, oh man, I'm jonesing. I forgot, it makes me appreciate it.
It felt weird. Yeah. It really felt weird. I always thought like, because during that time I kicked into like some kind of weird, like survival mode. And I remember just going to record at studios like nonstop, just like, I got to figure something out. And then I remember like playing again. I felt really strange. I felt like, am I okay? Is this all right? Like I didn't even get, COVID. I just was like, I just felt like it was probably not a good idea to engage. And it was weird, really weird. Cause the first show was at the soda bar here in San Diego. It was fine. The second one was at the Smell, and I remember playing, and this girl just spit all this water in my face. I was like, "It's too soon. It's way too soon. Like, what the fuck?
No, we can't do that."
I'm like, "Oh no, this is not what I signed up for." Like,
it definitely changes everything in terms of hygiene and that life on the road, or just life of being out in large groups. It just definitely like, oh wow, we are disgusting sponges to just soak everything up.
But then you take that and take it like Florida into context, or Texas that just like never stopped. I'm like, hey, I haven't played a show in like a year or been to a show. And I'm like looking at like my friends' bands just play every night. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, good. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I'm glad, that's when it made me like kind of glad I was from California, but it is what it is.
Yeah. It's a trippy one. So now what's coming up next? Do you have, run me down where you're at, what you have coming up, and for 31G, for Planet B, like where what are some of the things happening?
There's always a lot.
Yeah.
So there's like there's the Planet B LP is coming out on 31G, and actually there's another record we haven't even announced yet. We're doing a split 7-inch with Nate No Face.
Oh yeah.
So Planet B, Nate No Face, and then we also collaborated with Miss Bone. I don't know, BOAN, from Los Angeles. So like, that's a pretty special 7-inch, which is also not a good idea to do a 7-inch, but there's just a bunch of there's a lot of 31G stuff in the works. But again, I'm like broke, trying to fucking, how am I going to pay this? Like, I bounced a check today, like, which is funny too, like worst. Checks. But checks, I'm like, they didn't cash the check fast enough,
that's real. That's some old school technology there. Like I had the money when I gave it to you. If I would have Zelled or Venmo'd you or PayPal'd you,
it would have been done.
But the fact that you guys sat on it, it's the worst.
Yeah. But there's always like things, like I'm always trying to figure out like cool shit to do. Someone put out a film about me recently.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask about that. Yeah, what was your experience like with that? Like, how did that come about, and how do you feel about it?
I feel a lot of ways about it. I am grateful that someone cared. I'm grateful that the Turnstile Films crew did a great job. I just feel like it's a little weird, and I also feel like with Gabe Serbian passing, I was like, it should have been about Gabe. Like it really should have, but no one, like at the time, no one knew. But it's cool. But a lot of that has like, obviously, like whatever you do affects everything else. And that's why I do all these other stupid things. Not that the film is stupid, but like stupid things like go on Jerry Springer. Like that's fucking stupid. Yeah. So like I did a movie and I was part of a movie, this documentary, and it helps things. I feel it. I feel like people, so it's cool. But it was cool to like collaborate with other labels, like Enjoy the Ride put out the soundtrack, and it was just a wild thing to like, that's another thing too, like to hold a record. You're like, wow, this looks fucking insane. I can't believe this happened. There's a lot of weird feelings about it. There's a lot of weird feelings.
I mean, does it almost feel like a finality? I think that would be the thing that would scare me. It's like, why now? Like I still, the story's not done being written. Like I'm too young, or I'm too, I'm still, I don't know. That would be my feeling. But again, I don't, but how did that cross your mind, or was that sort of part of the thing of like, what does the timing mean about this?
Well, okay, so that's a really cool way to look at it. I can only hope that it's the end, but I thought like to me there's two things. One, I was like, hey, there's the like maybe this is the only time there's gonna be a movie made about me. Don't shit the bed. Like, can you guys please like get this on a streaming platform or something like that? That came up, or that I look at it like I don't know. There's other films like there's all these like Nick Cave films. Not that I'm like Nick Cave, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
Like, and he's still kicking ass. Like,
You're right.
This is fucking incredible. Like, so I don't have the luxury to be like, nah, I don't want a movie made about me. I'm kind of like, are you fucking sure you want to do this? That sounds like a terrible idea, but yeah. And a lot came out of it. I got to collaborate with like a lot of cool people, and I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a cool
maybe
idea.
There'll be another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a part 2. This time it's personal. This time this is
well,
for real.
I did try to, or have still been trying to convince the director to make like not a follow-up one, but like one about Gabe. I was like, oh, this should totally happen. And I think he's on board for it, but I don't, it's like that's a whole other world. Like, I mean, you've dealt with film stuff, right?
Oh my God. Our thing,
yeah.
we talk about shit the bed. I mean, that was really what we did. So, to catch the viewers up. So about 14 years ago, at sort of, I think, it was so surreal for my band, No Age, just to have any attention. The kind of attention we were getting was unbelievable to me. And all I could think to do was like, I want to document this all, not for my own gratification, but just, I was granted access to my heroes and to people that wouldn't have ever looked at me, for 2 seconds. And I was like, I can put a camera in their face and talk to them and actually interview them. It was the only thing I could think to do with this kind of access to people. I'm not good at schmoozing or really good at, kind of just hanging out. It's like, well, let's make something. I want to make a project. Let's do something. So we filmed for about 2 years, and you and Bobby were gracious enough to sit down with us. And the idea was to talk about all ages spaces, because that's kind of what I was focused on at the time. And sort of as our band was, people were giving shit about it, then I just wanted to talk about that. But then I had a personal sort of meltdown of where I had to realize that, I had a lot of undealt with, just sort of baggage of growing up and not being very happy about my life. And I took it out, through drinking and some drugs and some things. I was just like, this is bad. I'm not, it's one of those hard things of like experiencing success and just being miserable. And like, I'm doing everything I can. I can do, I couldn't think of anything else I'd want. I was achieving goals I'd set out for myself at a young age, unbelievable goals, but I was still so miserable. And so I had to, I got sober, and in that process, I just realized like I have to put the movie aside, because it was too much. I was burning myself out. It just definitely felt like I wasn't doing myself any favors by trying to make this film and make this record and do this tour. And that's definitely the burnout side of being a multi-hyphenate, or trying to do too much. And sometimes workaholic, kind of thing can be part of that too. You're running away from any kind of personal demons by just being busy, and over busying yourself is another way of not dealing with stuff. So I had to just kind of sit still as much as I could as a 28-year-old, on tour all the time, and just had to like sit still and sit on my hands and clear out some of my old personal stuff. You make peace with a lot of, past, dad, family thing, the stuff we're all fortunate enough, I'm sure, to have, and put that all in a place where I could then move forward without carrying this baggage with me, or having to like, do that. So the film was this thing of like, I love this, but if I don't stop trying to make this film, it's gonna kill me. I'm gonna burn out and explode. So I put it aside, and I think, I talked to some friends. They're like, well, now it'll be archive material, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but I just can't touch it anymore, because it was losing money. I was losing my mind. And so I just put it aside. It was on hard drives. And just recently, I talked to my filmmaker friend, Elisa, who I was making it with. She was the editor and producer with me. And we're like, is it archived? Is this now? Is 14 years? We're coming up on 15, 16, almost 20 years. Like, maybe if we start looking at it now, maybe we'd actually have something that kind of document, because we talked to a lot of people, some who aren't here anymore, and we capture a lot of stories of people at a certain time and place. And so we're just starting to look at it. One of the hard drives booted up, the other one didn't. So that's the fun. Now we're back in that world. But I'm like, okay, I think I can look at this. But it was weird. I mean, like, it's, life is a lot. It's a lot to do all these things. So.
Yeah. Also, too, like when you are in it, it's one thing, but when you look at it in retrospect, you're like, oh, it got all this like Like I remember when we did the interview with you, we were like, oh, this is so sick. I can't wait. And then I get it. Like we talked about it, life happens. But now it's like, maybe it's even more important now or more relevant now. Like, wow.
That was kind of the hope and the thought, like, okay, like this isn't, if I step away from it now, it's not going to lose value. If anything, it may gain value is my hope, or just sort of the dream of it all. But yeah, it's really hard. And I think I felt embarrassed too. Like, oh man, I failed at something. Like I can't accept that. You know what I mean? Or just that feeling of like, any project that doesn't, you try a million things and they don't always run the distance, but that's also just part of being a creative person. But I think I was always, at that point, I had this real fixation of like getting everything done. Like, Dean and I have talked about it even with the No Age stuff, where I was the guy who was like, we're not canceling shows, we're not missing things, like by any means necessary, we will be at the show, even if we have no gear and no equipment or anything. We're going to show up to the show and we're going to make the show happen. Like I just had this kind of tenacity to it. And, and as you get old, I don't know, there's part of me is like, oh yeah, it's not, there's, we have wives and kids and families, and our parents are getting older and, passing away and all that kind of stuff that you're like, oh yeah, this is part of life too. Like the band can't be everything because you're going to miss a lot of stuff.
It is crazy how the world of that we operate in is shifted, and we have to like adapt to that. It is really, really wild. I tripped out recently because Def Club played the Che Cafe with Unbroken. It was like a secret show for Unbroken, and it was like just so crazy to be back there 40 or 30, 35 years later, and like have like my friends there with their parents, and then my friends there with their children. And I was like, there's 3 generations of people here. It was a weird experience, because when we were in our 20s, we're just like, I just need to get through today. Like or this tour or whatever. Like, I never thought about what it's going to be like being in my 40s or pushing 50 or being in bands with people that are 50 seemed unheard of, know?
Oh yeah. It's wild. No, I remember. Jim who ran the Smell, who still runs the Smell, was always, like, wow, he's in his 30s. He's 33 years old. I remember, and we were all 20 something, 24, 25. He's about 10 years older than us. And it's like, wow, what's it like? But he was also a good role model though, too. You know what I mean? He was a union organizer and he showed up every night, turned the lights on, locked the doors behind, when it was done. So I think we learned a lot, and we're definitely influenced, by someone like that who was older, but still gave a shit and still showed up to make things happen. But it's wild. It's a whole other thing, of getting to, I think that's part of the fun of it too, especially as we see, with friends and loved ones, who aren't with us. You just realize life's fucking short and it goes so fast, and you have to spend that energy that you have in your life on the things that matter. And just let go of all the bullshit, whatever there was, if there was ever, if something was like, it's not worth the energy, if you can, and just like hold on to those good feelings and those good people.
Also, we lucked out. I mean, we were able to create cool shit. We were able to communicate with people, and life's fucking shitty sometimes and hard. But like, man, we really did luck out on some other kind of level. It's hard to like, even like when people talk about success, because it's like, yeah, I'm broke, fucking A. But like, I'm not being like, I'm broke, pity me. I'm like, man, I did all kinds of gnarly shit. Like I go on tour, like, and play to nobody, in Def Club, and like people, like, we don't get paid, but it's, but like someone will come up to me and be like, yo, when the Locust toured, you made me feel safe as a trans person. And I'm grateful for you. And I'm here because of that band. And I'm like, what the fuck? Or like here, like on the planet still, like I'm like, dude, that's crazy. That's a huge level of success, to consider.
Yeah. And it's not about money at that point. You know what I mean? And even the thing I think about now too is like, I feel very fortunate, like, to get to go play shows. I do a lot of solo ambient work. And again, that's not, it's not lighting the world on fire in any kind of pop sensational kind of way, but it means a lot to me and I love it. And, some people will come, not a lot, but it's the kind of thing I feel very fortunate to even be able to afford to do that. Like, hey, I got an hour out of my life. I'm going to come here and just play music for free. I volunteer at this awesome organization for adults with developmental disabilities Disabilities. It's a great creative studio called Tierra del Sol, and they have
Oh.
ceramics, they have painting, they have it's really fun. But I do it once a month. I volunteer and just go down and just play music, just play ambient music while the artists work, and it's so rewarding.
Whoa.
And then I'll turn it over to them. I'll play for a half hour and let them play for an hour, and I'll back them up on the drum machine and just kind of just jam out with these super creative adults with disabilities, and it's just amazing. It's that kind of thing of like I feel like I should pay them. Almost at the end of the day, it's like I get so much out of this, and just that feeling of just like my heart explodes once a month. I get this kind of like major just recharge of just feeling good feelings, or just the creativity and just believing in people and the generosity of spirit, all that stuff. I was like, this is great. That I feel lucky I can do that. That I'm not tied down to a job where I can't get out there and still do cool, fun, creative things. Like that's a good level of being broke. Like I'm not making any money, but I have enough to do what I want with my time. I don't owe my time to some other company where they own me from 9 to 5, which a lot of people do. And I respect that. And that's a big appreciation for me on this side of like just appreciating all the creative stuff that affords me the time to sit with you and talk to you and do these other creative things.
That's such an interesting thing to even point out. I mean, it is crazy. Like I like growing up, I was like, oh, little like sort of like milestones. Like what's a job stopper tattoo? Like I'm going to get that so I don't have to go work at Target, and no offense to people that work at Target, like fucking someone has to work there. I don't know if I have that in my, I just can't handle that shit, and I would want to go and like hang out with people with disabilities and have this like sort of crazy exchange of there's no monetary exchange of like reward, but there's like this other reward that's just something you can't even, I don't even know how to put it into words, but that's the thing where you're like, this is what I want to get paid by, like the sort of like gratefulness or happiness, or just the sheer fact that you're creating something with other human beings. That exchange of energy is something that's monumental.
So. Well, yeah. If you're ever up this way in LA, it'd be fun. I invite people to come with me. I usually have try to have a guest once a month, and it's just really fun. And again, we're just, it's a lot of just hanging out, but it's a great fun. I don't know. It's a great experience, but it's available to anybody, you just kind of find that thing, but I tell my wife sometimes, it's like, we won. Whatever it was I was fighting against, whether the angry teen, like not that I still don't, a lot to be angry about, but just all of the like, I think the fear and all of that sort of like, I knew all the stuff I didn't want to be. I had that in terms of my guiding principle. I didn't have a lot of direct role models, but I knew who I didn't want to be. I had a lot of jerks growing up, and I'd be like, okay, fuck that. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not going to be like them. I'm not going to be like them. And I think that was the big fear, that by hook or by crook, you try to like change patterns in your life or change people who are in your life. Like, I'm not doing what they're doing. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that stuff. And I feel like, at that point I'm like, oh yeah, here I'm in my 40s and I'm not an asshole. I'm not being a dick, and this works. I won.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I think we grew up, like fighting against something, and I don't think we ever had we weren't able to pause generally and say like, well, what am I for? I know what I'm against, but what am I for? And I feel like with age, we get that opportunity because there is a natural pause, and you're like, okay, what do I want to actually fight for? Or what am I for? I know what I'm against. I mean, it was very obvious growing up, in punk and stuff. We knew what we were against. Yeah. So yeah, that is a trip.
Yeah.
But even that, like, I remember growing up and playing like, Food Not Bombs benefits or like anti-racist action shows, or it was like every show was like, with all that, we're against these injustices in the world, but we're for humanity,
self-reliance, DIY. I guess that's sort of, there was just an inherent, I'm existing in this kind of off the grid, third rail sort of like way. That just our existence or the support of the friends and sort of cohorts in that world is like, that was a statement of itself.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. And I think I'm also just, I think I reflect on it too, just culture at large, but definitely within the punk and music and DIY culture, I think we've evolved so much too, just socially and just understanding what the bullshit,
Mm.
there's a lot of fallout. Every generation has its sort of like cloud that lingers longer than it should until people, wipe that off the map and replace it with something else. You know what I mean? I think the 80s had a lot of 70s bullshit hanging over it, and the 90s had the 80s bullshit, and vice versa. It all kind of goes over. But I'm really proud of, I think what the punk DIY sort of like ethos and social sort of responsibility is, without being heavy handed. I feel like I see a lot of it in younger bands and stuff. And it's just a lot of acceptance, and I think that was a lot of stuff that was hard for us in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it's like, let's make space, it was kind of the post Riot Girl, but still, a lot of bullshit out there. So a lot of sexual and, gender politics that just weren't, that weren't easily navigated in those early days. And I see that really has evolved.
And it's still there. It's like, I don't want to diminish like the progression that we've made, but I'm like, man, let's get our fucking shit together. And we are, but I feel like there's a lot to go up against. A lot. There's all the systems
you have to be vigilant.
Created.
You have to be vigilant too. I think that's the kind of stuff too. It's like you forget about something, you don't talk about it, and it comes back. Lord knows, if we're still, all the it's just on a bigger geopolitical level. But I think that's one thing that punk has always taught me. It's like, do what's right in front of you. Affect your scene, affect your city, your culture. Like, take responsibility for your small corner, and that can lead to bigger things. But you got to just do what's in front of you and be part of that. I don't. The bigger stuff. Sometimes I just I can get depressed.
Yeah. Well, the do what's in front of you is the do it yourself ethos, right?
Yeah.
It's like, let's just take what we got access to and run with it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think that's a good theme. That's a good place to pause it. Justin, thank you so much. Cool. Yeah. Do you want, do you want people, do you give it, where do people find out more about you if they haven't already followed you places? Where do you shout out? Or anybody?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just find me in person. It's so much cooler.
But shows, you have tours coming up, you have records coming out. Where do people buy those things?
Yeah, it all kind of sources from 31G. So, 31G, THREEONEG.com, and you can go from there. But like social media shit says it all. There's always tours, there's always records, and any kind of interest that people might have. I appreciate it,
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk. I know you got some travel coming up. So
no, that's all right. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Cool. Wow. There it is. The legend, Mr. Justin Pearson. Thank you, Justin, so much for taking the time to sit down with me. You're a wizard. You are a incredible creative force. Like you said, go to 31g.com. That's THREEONEG.com to follow everything that he's up to, all the bands he's in, the bands he puts out, the tours, the podcasts. All things Justin Pearson. Look to 31g.com for more info. And if you are not familiar with the Locust, or if this is your first time hearing Justin, I recommend going out there and just Googling, YouTubing. There are as many rabbit holes to fall down, and there's lots of stuff is well documented, and it is fun. It is a wild world, and it's Justin's world. We're just all living in it. All right. See you Monday.
I just started a record label, and I fucking regret every second of it.